So we are discussing module 7 of public international law that deals with state territory and state succession. So far as state territory is concerned, we had dealt with what kind of state territories are and how those state territories can be acquired as well as it can be lost. Second point that we are discussing is state succession, wherein we seen the definition given by different authors of the state succession. It is nothing but, in short, a replacement of one state at the place of another. Therefore, predecessor state and successor state. It is the relation between these two states. Then we also see the succession of state is different from succession of government. Government changes in particular country as per the constitutional process. However, the state comes to an end either because of war, because of treaty, or because of other reasons like dismemberment, merger, etc., or cession. So that is different. Here the question is what will happen with the right, obligation, liabilities of predecessor state once predecessor state comes to an end and successor state takes its place. Then that's what we are observing, different subject and their consequences. Like treaties, we see clean state rule. In case of debt, we see the discretionary power, purpose of the debt. Then we also refer the public property that will be gone to the successor state. Now we are observing the tort. Now tort, tort is a civil wrong for which the compensations are claimed. Civil wrong is a wrongful act but not a crime. Wrongful act committed by wrongdoer against another, giving rise to civil action. So here we have to see the tort in the context of wrongful act by the state, government tort, in other words. So if the earlier government commits a tort, that government, sorry, state commits a tort, state comes to an end and new nation acquire power there, the whether the new nation, that is succeeding state, is liable for tortious actions committed by previous state, in short. So the succeeding state are under no liability as a general rule for the torts of the predecessor state unless there were decree already passed. That's what we have to see the judgment of Robert Brown claim. Actually, it is a case decided by arbitrators in the year 1923. So we are observing this case, the Robert E. Brown's claim case. So Mr. Robert E. Brown was an American citizen, and in the year 1894 he went to South Africa and started the work of digging gold mines there. After some time, the head of the state of South Africa declared in the eastern part of that area that state would undertake the work. In other words, state acquired the acquisition of gold mine work in the country. Therefore, Robert E. Brown, being aggrieved by that action of state, submitted an application for license for carrying on digging of gold mines, but it was rejected. Later on, the government withdrew its earlier order for carrying on digging of gold mines. Therefore, Robert Brown filed a suit in 1895 for recovery of compensation against the South African government. But the case would not proceed because in the meantime, Great Britain conquered South Africa and incorporated in its empire uh, नाही ऐकणार ते yes, come back. So because of the unlawful rejection of the Robert Brown's claim, he filed a suit for recovery of compensation. Because earlier it was nationalized, later the nationalization policy was revoked. So Robert Brown's claim was revived. Then he again approached, but his claim was rejected. By dissatisfied with this action, he brought the suit for compensation against the earlier government. But the case could not proceed because, in the meantime, Great Britain conquered South Africa and incorporated in its empire. So, South Africa then became the part of Britain. So, the government Africa contended that, the government of America, of whose Robert Brown was a citizen. See, three nations were involved. The America, because American citizen Robert Brown. The claim was brought by America on behalf of its citizen. Otherwise, you are thinking that how an individual can be a subject approached before international forum. It is not individual, but it is the state approach through, individual approach through its own state. So America, on behalf of Robert Brown, that the American citizen contended that Mr. Brown had been authorized to carry on a digging of gold mines, but this right subsequently snatched from him before South Africa was annexed by Britain. So it was agreed to refer this dispute to the arbitrators. And the arbitrators had decided two questions for conclusion of this case. One is whether South Africa refused to do justice, whether South Africa refused to do justice to Robert E. Brown, and second, if justice was denied to him, whether the succeeding state of Africa would be responsible for the loss and damage. In other words, whether Britain was liable to pay compensation being a succeeding state, because tort was committed by South Africa and now South Africa is a part of Britain. In reply to the first question, the arbitrators held that justice was denied to Robert E. Brown because if the case had proceeded, the South Africa would have to pay the damages. ती केस जर साऊथ आफ्रिका तसंच अस्तित्वात राहिलं असतं, ती केस जर साऊथ आफ्रिकेसमोर चालली असती, तर साऊथ आफ्रिकेला नुकसान भरपाई द्यावी लागली असती. त्याच्यामुळं justice was denied to Robert Brown. So, in reply to the second question referred to them, the arbitrator decided that the peace agreement under which South Africa surrendered Great Britain, that agreement or under that agreement, Great Britain did not undertake the liability for tort. So ultimately, the terms of agreements were referred under what terms and conditions one state surrendered to another state. So the here for torts committed by South Africa, hence Britain was not liable. But arbitrator also said that, but if the former state had accepted or had decided to pay the compensation, then the succeeding state should pay the damages for tort. जर ऑलरेडी एक तर त्यांनी ट्रिटीमध्ये ऍक्सेप्ट करायला पाहिजे होतं की आमच्या ज्या टॉट झाल्या त्याच्यासाठी तुम्ही कॉम्पेन्सेशन पे करा. ब्रिटनने ते ऍडमिट करायला पाहिजे होते की तुमच्याकडे ज्या टॉर्टचे ऍक्शन असतील त्याच्यासाठी आम्ही पे करू, किंवा ऑलरेडी तिथं जर निकाल झाला असता आणि मग succession झालं असतं तर केस was different. So here the Robert E. Brown was denied his claim by applying the law relating to state succession. Now we will move towards next subject, that is archives. What will happen to archives of the predecessor state? Whether archive will remain with the predecessor state or whether they will be go with the succeeding state. Now archive means the historical articles of importance, the unique articles possessed by that particular state. If it is with them, they may preserve. We have archaeological survey of India. So historical monuments and that can be preserved by them. Even this new government established one archaeological commission, I think, for preservation of archives or recovery of archives which were lost by Indian government with some other state. So there was a debatable question that whether Kohinoor diamond is an archive of the India, and whether Indian government made initiatives to recover that archive from the Britain, because that is with the Britain. But the PIL was disposed, and that question was settled that it was a gift made by the Indian government to Britain. That's what, that cannot be recovered. Gifts are irrevocable as a principle of general law recognized by civilized nations. So here we have to say archives in that sense. So here there is codified law for it, that is Vienna Convention on State Property, Archives and Debt. We already referred this convention. It covers three subjects: debt, archives and state property. The convention was of 1983, and Article 25 says that, or it emphasizes on preserving the integral character of the state archives of the predecessor state. The successor state is under obligation to preserve the archives of the predecessor state with them. They must not destroy those archives. जतन करून ठेवण्याची जबाबदारी 25 नुसार नवीन राष्ट्रावर टाकलेली आहे. जर नवीन राष्ट्र तिथे आलं असेल तर जुन्या राष्ट्राच्या ऐतिहासिक गोष्टी ज्या ऐतिहासिक दृष्ट्या महत्वाच्या आहे किंवा इतर दृष्ट्याने ज्या दुर्मिळ आहेत त्या नवीन राष्ट्रानं जतन करून ठेवायच्या या 25 नुसार. So it provides that the passing of or appropriate reproduction of state archives of the predecessor state to a newly independent successor state should be determined in such a way that each of those states can benefit as widely and equitably as possible from those archives. दोन्ही राज्यांना, दोन्ही राष्ट्रांना त्याचा फायदा समप्रमाणात घेता येईल अशा पद्धतीने त्या आर्काइव्हचं मॅनेजमेंट त्या राष्ट्रानं करायचं. Secondly, bilateral agreements between the two states should not infringe the right of the people of those states to development, to information about their history and to their cultural heritage. जर bilateral agreement होत असेल तर ते agreement करताना या हक्कांवर गदा नकोय. जरी ते हिस्टॉरिकल आर्काइव्ह दुसऱ्या राष्ट्राकडे गेला असेल तरी पॅरेंट राष्ट्रातले जे नागरिक आहेत त्यांचा राईट टू इन्फॉर्मेशन म्हणजे ते पाहण्याचा, त्याबद्दल माहिती घेण्याचा, त्याचा विकास करण्याचा किंवा त्याच्या इतिहासाबद्दल जाणून घेण्याचा, संस्कृतीबद्दल जाणून घेण्याचा जो अधिकार आहे तो संपुष्टात होणार नाही. सपोज पिरामिड्स इन द इजिप्ट, इफ लॅटर इजिप्ट इज कन्कर्ड by another state should not disturb the pyramids in the Egypt, and the Egyptians will have right to inspect, to get information, to study, etc. of that particular archive, and bilateral agreement must not infringe over these right. So these are the different subject about which archives are talking about. Yes. Okay. So these are the different subjects dealing with the state succession. Now there were certain theories, that theories talks about the state succession. Now these theories are of redundant in nature, not workable in the sense, because already codified convention is there so far as three subject is concerned: debt, archive and public property. For treaties there was clean state rule, etc. Even for debt the purpose, so clear cut laws are there, but still for academic discussion these theories are important. The first is negative theory. Of course, the word negative itself suggests that as per this theory, since the universal succession theory did not take into account the existing fact of international practice, negative theories are developed during the latter half of the 19th century and early part of the 20th century. In other words, negative theories are modern. One another is universal. Universal theory says clean state rule or etc. That is the approach of universal theory. But negative theory says that the sovereignty of the predecessor state over the absorbed territory is abandoned. and the successor state does not exercise its jurisdiction over the territory in virtue of transfer of power from its predecessor, but solely because it has acquired the possibility of expanding its own sovereignty in the manner dictated by its own will. Therefore, none of the incidences of sovereignty passes to the successor state. So this theory is not practicable. It says even though there is a succession of a state, the sovereign principles will remain constant with the predecessor state. So succession in negative form. The sovereignty of the earlier state doesn't lose, but it is not practicable or not as per the practices of state. Then why that particular succession took place? So the latter seizes what it can and repudiate that it will. So in negative succession, in short, no succession took place. The earlier state will behave subject under control of course, of the successor state. But everything will not be passed to new state, particularly principle of sovereignty. अंतर्गत बाबतीमध्ये त्याच राष्ट्राला त्यांचे कारभार पाहता येतील. नवीन राष्ट्र जर आला असेल तर ते फक्त आंतरराष्ट्रीय गोष्टी पाहिल असं निगेटिव्ह थेरी सांगते. आणि त्याच्या अगेन्स्ट युनिव्हर्सल थेरी आहे की एव्हरीथिंग विल बी लुक्ड बाय द successor state. So second is universal theory of succession. According to this theory, upon change of sovereignty over a given territory, the new sovereign, that is successor state, succeeds all the right and obligations of the predecessor state in relation to the territory affected by such change without exceptions and modification. तर या थेरीनुसार जे नवीन राष्ट्र आलेले ते सगळ्या गोष्टी घेईल. So this theory says that all the right and obligation of predecessor state passes to successor state upon the change of sovereignty. So negative succession says no sovereignty will be changed, even though there is succession. Universal theory says everything will be changed, including sovereignty. And third doctrine was propounded by Julius Nyerere. So Nyerere is a name. This doctrine was propounded by Julius Nyerere. That's what doctrine is called as Nyerere doctrine of state succession. So, as per Julius Nyerere, who was the first president of Tanzania, considered that international agreements dating from colonial times should be renegotiated when a state becomes independent, as the nation should not be bound by something that the nation was not in a sovereign position to agree to at that time. नवीन राष्ट्र जर अस्तित्वात आलेलं असेल तर वसाहत काळामध्ये जे राष्ट्र ज्यांच्याकडे होतं त्यांनी ज्या ट्रीटीज केल्या, काय जे केलं असेल ते नवीन राष्ट्राला निगोशिएट करण्याची संधी मिळावी आणि ते नवीन राष्ट्रानं ठरवावं. सपोज भारत आहे किंवा अनेक राष्ट्र आहेत भारतासारखे जे ब्रिटिशाचा प्रांत होते. ब्रिटिशांकडे असताना ब्रिटिशांनी अनेक इंटरनॅशनल कन्व्हेन्शन्स केले. इवन पार्टिसिपेशन इन UNO वॉज डन इन दी ब्रिटिश रूल. आणि मग ते राष्ट्र स्वतंत्र झाल्यानंतर जे काय ॲग्रीमेंट झालेले असतील कॉलोनियल काळामध्ये ते ॲग्रीमेंट रिनिगोशिएट करण्याचा राईट नवीन राष्ट्राला असावा आणि ते सक्सेशननं त्यांच्यावर येऊ नये. कारण ज्यावेळी ते ॲग्रीमेंट झाले त्यावेळी ते सॉव्हरेन नव्हते. त्यांचं कॉलनी मधून सुटका झाली त्यावेळी ते सॉव्हरेन झाले. त्याच्यामुळे त्यांना नवीन पद्धतीने ते निगोशिएट करण्याचा अधिकार असावा. Therefore, according to this doctrine, a newly independent state can, upon independence, review the international treaties that it stands to inherit and decide which of the agreement it will accept and which it will repudiate. Although such an optional approach to events of state succession was not new and was already recognized by customary international law. So this aspect is the part of customary international law which was just put forth by the Julius Nyerere. So Nyerere is recognized for the modern formulation of the optional doctrine of the law of state succession. So it is worth mentioning that this doctrine came to existence after Nyerere made a unilateral declaration to the acting General Secretary of the United Nations in 1961. Well, in the year 1961. So Nyerere doctrine is advantageous in several ways. How? The first, it allows state to fill the void created by the lapse of predecessor treaties, while maintaining the right to examine each treaty individually before deciding whether to maintain such legal obligations. पहिला राईट या डॉक्ट्रिनमुळे मिळतो की आपण सत्तेत नसताना आधीच्या राष्ट्रांनी ज्यावेळी आपण सॉवरीन नव्हतो त्यावेळी ज्या ज्या ट्रिटी केल्यात त्या पुन्हा आपल्याला एक्झामाइन करण्याची संधी मिळते आणि त्या कंटिन्यू ठेवायच्या की नाही ठेवायच्या याचा विचार करता येतो. पब्लिक ओपिनियन घेता येईल. सेकंड, with the above advantage, Nyerere doctrine is also important as it rectifies the aforementioned shortcomings with regard to negative succession or clean state rule. या दोन गोष्टीमुळे जे शॉर्टफॉल तयार झालेत, क्लीन स्टेट रूल असेल किंवा निगेटिव्ह सक्सेशन मुळे, ते भरून काढण्याची अपॉर्च्युनिटी या डॉक्ट्रिन मुळे मिळेल. आणि थर्ड, unlike the clean state doctrine under which a new state starts without any of the obligation of the predecessor state, Nyerere doctrine of succession, however, does not rule out or prejudice the possibility or desirability of renewal of commitments or agreements of mutual interest to the parties concerned. So, it gives ultimately discretion or rethinking capacity to a new state, whether to go with the earlier treaties entered during the colonial era or not. So, these are the three important theories relating to succession. So, with these theories of succession, here we had completed the module 7, that is the state, territory and state succession.